mar scóideoin bheith seo. Níl go leabhar againn ach seasamh a thógaigh son na fíringe. Nó ní lé páir gata sin éirte Faionsaí ón ó rialtas féin agus bhfuil na páirtithe go léir i gach lagham. Agus deirím sin go héal eisteach ar bith ag dul leis. Níl anadaí polatúil nó freasúra cartagain, agus níl sé sin ar fáil a meas éon ceannas na páirtithe téistigh nó te go mud an dáil. Tá sin fíor is cuma iad in animas a bheith ó net a dheis nó net a cré. Tá go réon dul agus ba ceartúin all réig low. Friends, we have had to leave here again today because we had no choice but to stand up for the truth. Day after day, our fundamental rights are being rolled back. We are living under a system which is properly called rule by decree. It is properly called that because our minister can simply sign an order depriving us of our fundamental and inalienable rights, and on signing, it has the force of law in our state. And when I say it has the force of law, I mean exactly that. It is force in every sense of the word, and increasingly we are witness to force being used against upstanding citizens for no good reason. It is curious why these arbitrary powers are not deployed against the drug mongers in our community or against the financial predators that are terrorizing families throughout the country. But if somebody wants to go to mass, if somebody wants to meet their neighbour for a pint, or God forbid, that citizens might want to assemble peaceably to discuss matters of public policy, that becomes, at the sole discretion of government, under these emergency powers, a criminal outrage. Imagine organising these rallies here in Cork. I'm told that the organisers have to meet in secret because they could be charged and face huge fines. Is this a criminal activity? Well, the act they voted on is named, and I quote, Criminal Justice Enforcement Powers, close quote. So effectively, they are criminalising normal human social interaction, and this is at the discretion of government. Looking back 2.5 years, it seems clear to me why Drew Harris was appointed as Commissioner of Garda Síochána. Because he has direct experience in managing a lawless police force and of taking direction from corrupt government. Remember, Drew Harris has infamy from his covering up of the Glenane murder gang. Harris is sworn under the British Official Secrets Act. How can he be loyal to our constitution and be under obligation to a foreign state at the same time? Under his watch, we are witnessing increasingly heavy-handed policing. Perhaps that is directly why he was appointed. Drew Harris should be in jail
He's a fascist!
Members of the Gardaí must not allow themselves to be used against their own people, because this is what is happening.
They're loving it.
I want to ask you, to think about civil rights within our state and about our fundamental human rights and universal human rights. How do we reconcile the right of any government to suspend or deny such things under any circumstances at all? How can we reconcile ourselves to any government who can do so, even without reference to Dáil Éireann? There is an old saying, if it quacks, it must be a duck. Well, the duck has quacked. We are now living under a system of rule by decree. This is not democracy or anything like it. The matter now before us is before President Michael D. Higgins for signing. Michael D. built his reputation, whether justified or not. He built his reputation on claiming to defend human rights in Africa and in Central America. Will he now defend our rights? Will Michael D. defend the integrity and the importance of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights? Will he do his specific duty and defend our Constitution by refusing to sign these measures into power? Some say that Michael D. has no power other than to delay matters. But I say he has no more authority to allow this violation of our rights than Pinochet had or than Marcos had in Chile or in the Philippines. It is a decision for Michael D. Will he uphold fundamental rights or will he not? We are now subjects of the state rather than citizens who own the state and who have fundamental rights, rights that we reserved for ourselves when we enacted Democracy in 1937. In democracy, citizens are supposed to decide the policy of their own state. They debate matters and they study issues and they make proposals and they decide.
Wouldn't have got it myself at home by
But,
I would have to watch
for
the way
example,
nights or something.
when was the last time anybody here was consulted regarding the housing for the homeless crisis in Ireland?
Said no, that Friday come you get that.
Did we, as a people, agree that somebody should be without a place to call
Everything, you know what I
home?
mean? Fibre, I got your lad back then, man.
Did we agree to allow vulture funds to prey on our housing and give them tax exemptions while doing so? Every week, unfortunate people are taken out of the River Lee, or they die on our streets, or they die in homeless shelters, or they die in lonely, quiet places, isolated. Housing and homelessness is a major problem here, and it will continue until we change it.
Hey.
Imagine something. Our state has clocked up nearly 50 billion euros worth of debts to fight a relatively minor problem that they call the coronavirus. For half of that money, just for half of it, the state could have built 100,000 quality homes. 100,000 homes. For just half of the COVID bill, they could have housed every single family on the waiting list in Ireland. And they could have employed thousands of workers in the process. These homes would have generated rental income for the state and increased the overall production capacity. But no, the money goes to Big Pharma and the usual list of vested interests that feed off government contracts. They are greedy monsters. And of course, the monopoly-controlled banking business, who created all this money out of nothing on a computer keyboard with no hard day's work done to create the wealth. These banks will earn massive profits as the loans are repaid. And who will pay back this massive debt? The working women and the working men of Ireland will pay it. That is who. The generations to come will be shackled with even more debts piled up upon the debts that were forced upon us to bail out the private banks and their bondholders 10 years ago. But there's no bailout for the people. Just abuse, dismissal, disrespect, exploitation, and coercion for when we dare to object to it. This is about fundamental rights. So now I have another question for you. Do you think that any of you have any real say in deciding the policy of our state? Another serious question, and this one I want you to think about when you leave and mull over the impact of it. Given that our Constitution says that it is the right of the people, and I quote you from Bunrock, to decide all questions of national policy. That's what the Constitution says our right is. So how does any citizen, how does any of you step forward to propose a policy to our state? We're supposed to own the state. Lord Cartick of our son. You can't propose policy. There is no such mechanism. How do we propose it? With whom? Where? How? The answer is you can't. Nowhere in this state can a citizen step forward and propose policy, even though that is what is our right. All you can do is appeal to the private member clubs, the political parties. That's all one can do, is reduced to that. The party system here decides everything. They are lackeys of the powerful vested interests that rule over us. But remember this, less than 1.5% of the people in Ireland are members of any political party whatsoever. So they are elite. And even within that elite, they answer from the top down. There's a handful of people who rule over Ireland. The more we look at our state, the more we see how utterly undemocratic it is. But these emergency powers, they bring us into deeper disgrace. Shame on those who represent us. Shame on them. The renewal of emergency powers this week was ably assisted by the so-called opposition. Yes, there was a divided vote, but for 15 months, less than a handful of TDs made any serious comment at all in defence of our fundamental rights. When normal, everyday human activity was criminalised, they remained silent, or they spoke only in whispers, not to cause any real problem for their master. Fundamentally, our rulers have no respect for us. They do not love Ireland or things Irish. They are the overseers of our enslavement. If there was ever a time to shout out, it's now. Our civil rights and truth worth defending. The main opposition party has played a particularly cynical role in renewing these powers. They supported government policy for over a year. In fact, they demanded harsher measures. Over the last week, they went from fully supporting the emergency law, then abstaining during the Senate vote, and then finally switching at the last minute to vote against it in the Dáil. However, Interesting is the fact that 5 senior Sinn Féin TDs were absent when the vote was called, including Mary Lou. Their presence could have changed the result. Of course, their absence was probably by agreement with government, with some lame excuse attached to it. In Irish surveilling, we have a name for their likes. We call them Taig and Dá Hail. Taig who sits on both sides of the fence. For them, principles mean nothing, and obviously fundamental rights mean nothing either. Shame on them. Finally, I want to appeal to the working men and women of Ireland, to you, the ones who carry the burden of paying all the bills in this country. The appeal is, we must get organised. Already, tax increases are promised. There will be price increases and cutbacks of services everywhere in order that the banks can get their pound of flesh. We are told that inflation may seamlessly eat away at these debts. But if it does, inflation will eat away at wages and at pensions as well. The World Economic Order is doing its best to prolong its own existence. To do so is intensifying levels of exploitation and grabbing resources, taking property, everything to preserve value. We must not allow ourselves to be cannon fodder for these leeches in our society. We must reject their anarchy. A chuirde Mullen go Joe, Dave an fóra Cassav, agus a raid, le haig factus mór, Condol agus ar tarta féin a pussant, agus ag fred san saoirse. Ha mé fuipas fada go mór, ha sé nám doing Irene. We must take the practical steps to get organised. There are some peoples around here. At the end, there'll be some singers with clipboards. I ask you, come forward, leave a means of contact and your name, so that we can build this movement, because ahead of us is utter disaster, and we must organise. And as Katie pointed out earlier, we cannot rely upon the official media. They're liars. They take their money. And again, I reiterate our thank you to the Free Independent Media, the Corruption Awareness Ireland page, the Irish Inquiry, the People's Paper that's here, other initiatives which are standing up for the people. Friends, we can have a bright future if we decide for that. We can have a bright future if we choose to do so, but we must be committed. Our children and our grandchildren are depending upon us. Well done, Dermot.